these new policies. And I believe, Melody, am I wrong? USDA and a few others have delayed and not have gone down the path.
VA and USDA are not on board.
Yep.
Also, if it's a loan for a lender that's not going secondary market, my understanding would be the appraiser would have a conversation with the lender and say, do you want this done ANSI measurement or otherwise, the way I've been doing it?
Exactly. And we do know that this is going to impact your ability, obviously, to prepare accurate CMAs. And I think another concern that we all have at the state level down to the local level is, as we all are aware, Pennsylvania has an older housing stock, and this becomes very difficult and could be very articulate with some of these areas, given that, again, 50% of our housing stock was built prior to 1970. So again, don't kill the messenger. We're glad to be joined here by Melody. And I look at it, Melody, you can correct me, and I'll just anecdotally say, I think we all adhere to standards in our life. And one of the standards is driving on the right-hand side of the road, but the state doesn't tell us that we need to stay 4 inches from the white line and 4 inches from the yellow line. And so this is kind of putting that in perspective, that I think we all want a standard, but how far the standard gets pushed is somewhat problematic. So again, thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to Melody.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. And I appreciate Justin's introduction, because I am not the person who came up with ANSI, nor am I the person who thought it would be a grand idea to institute it as a requirement for Fannie Mae. I am on the Real Property Valuation Committee at NAR. We had NAR ask for a delay because this is going to be, let's be honest, this is going to be a hot mess. So let me get you into this, and I'll share with you what I know. So first of all, we're talking about ANSI. The times they are changing. So what is ANSI? It's the American National Standard for Single Family Residential Buildings. Now, ANSI also has a commercial standard. I am not going to talk about the commercial standard at all today. We would all get migraine headaches if I went into that. If you're a commercial practitioner, you may be familiar with it. A commercial appraiser would be familiar with it, but let's talk residential. So the big question is, why are we doing this? Why is Fannie Mae doing this? This went into effect on April 1st, fittingly on April Fool's Day. Yeah. Folks, this is all about big data. Fannie Mae has been on a mission to get as much data as they can in their database to allow them to do automated valuation models with their own proprietary software, which is Collateral Underwriter. And Fannie Mae introduced the Uniform Appraisal Data Set back in 2011. So that is now what, 11 years ago. The Uniform Appraisal Data Set was the one that said appraisers could no longer use things like average, good, fair, poor. Instead, we had to use quality and condition ratings. We had to enter addresses in the US Postal Service format, because the thing with data is you have to have the data in the right format to search the data, to data mine it. So for example, the addresses that they have, that allows Fannie Mae, if I send an appraisal in and I say, I used as a comp 123 Main Street, Fannie Mae has the ability to go into their database and say, what other appraisal do we have where they ever used 123 Main Street? And they get to compare the data. Collateral Underwriter is an AVM. Many appraisers, including myself, believe Fannie Mae has been on an absolute path to eliminate the residential appraiser as we know it, to eliminate one person going to the house, doing an inspection, developing an appraisal, writing a report. And the more data they have and the better data they have, the more they can eliminate appraisers. I'm trying to be as even-handed as I can about this. So are there pros and cons? Sure, there's always pros and cons. it's a national standard with rules. That is actually a pro because then everyone's on the same page of how we're going to do something. For many years, Fannie Mae had their own guidelines about measuring, which most appraisers, including myself, followed Fannie Mae guidelines. Everyone doesn't get to decide on their own, and it would eventually create conformity. The cons, again, so far only Fannie Mae has done this, and they were asked to postpone it by NAR, and they refused. VA and HUD have not adopted it, and appraisers doing non-Fannie Mae appraisals are free to use whatever system they're using now. Now, I want you to pause for a minute and think about this in terms of the consumers you and I encounter every day. And I think most of you know I am bilingual. I speak appraiser and agent. So I list properties and sell properties and appraise properties. So like most of you, I have gone to a listing appointment and the seller has brought out an appraisal. And they bring it to you and they say, well, I refinanced my house last year and here's what the appraisal said. And we look at that. Now imagine going to that same listing appointment with the same homeowner, and the homeowner says, I don't understand this at all because I've had two appraisals. I got a copy, I had my refinance appraisal, and then this other appraisal was done because I was going to sell my property, and the buyer's agent sent it to my agent who sent it to me. And when you look at them side by side, they are completely different. And that is not a good thing for our industry because it means people will not trust us. They will not trust the process. It's going to be a problem. Now, other pros and cons would replace a mishmash of measuring methods with one universal method. It would allow apples to apples comparison. So if everyone is doing it the same way, then we're comparing an apple to an apple. But the cons, which I've already talked about this, consumers and real estate agents do not currently understand it. Every possibility for 3 or more measurements to be available for the same house, which will cause consumers to distrust real estate appraisers and other professionals. So when you're looking at measurements, Fannie Mae guidelines, which they've now replaced with ANSI, courthouse records, which were never designed to be reliable, ANSI, or a guesstimate. Now, I think every single person has pulled a courthouse record and gone to a house and it's been wrong. On the other hand, I can tell you in my county, there was a period of time when there was a man named George McCormick, who was our chief assessor. And Mr. McCormick, God rest his soul, was very good at measuring. So when I go out in the field today and I've got a house that was sketched when Mr. McCormick was our chief assessor, I measure it, and 99% of the time, his measurements are exactly correct. I'm talking about the exterior footprint of the house. He's right. Now, that doesn't account for additions an owner may have put on, which were not picked up by the assessment office, and therefore it's wrong that way. But let's be honest, right now in the industry, we've got some people doing Fannie Mae, some people are still using courthouse records, some people are using ANSI, and some people are guesstimating. And I know there are brokers that do not want agents measuring homes because of liability. And there are actually MLS systems where people don't put in square footage. Your traveling instructor has seen those MLS systems. So I have to share with you what I did to get here today. So that's a copy of a book I bought, but in addition to the book, I took a 7-hour course. I researched it. I am not going to try to condense 7 hours for you. I'm going to try to cover for you what I think is going to be the stuff you really need to think about and take a look at it. Now, this author, Hamp Thomas, who appeared in video in my course, very nice man, bless his heart. He thinks the solution is every MLS system should require ANSI, and agents either learn to do it or hire an appraiser to measure the houses for them. And I say, fat chance. We have so many MLS systems across the United States. I cannot imagine that happening unless NAR would say it's part of your MLS bylaws, you have to do this. I don't see NAR doing that. And then on top of that, folks, not every MLS is owned by a realtor board. For example, out in Pittsburgh, you have RAMP, which is the Realtors Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh. Their MLS is privately owned by a group of brokers in Pittsburgh. So when this guy was carrying on about that in the slide and saying, this is a solution, I'm like, I just don't see that happening. And as long as that doesn't happen, we're going to have a patchwork of what people are doing. Chris will be getting Excedrin migraine as instructors. We'll be getting Excedrin migraine because there's going to be some headaches. So let's dig in. And what I'm going to do is cover some terms that I think you need to know, point out specific things in ANSI you will encounter as an agent probably, and help you understand the challenges you will be facing. Now, Allison's recording this, so, if you need to go back and look at a definition or something, you're fine. So square footage, we all pretty much know what that is. It's an amount based on measurement described in feet. So within the industry, if we say to each other, the house is 1,200 square feet, we all have a pretty good idea of what we mean by that. Now, finished space. All space considered as finished square footage should be derived using exterior measurements when possible. I'll loop back to that. So the standard Fannie Mae measurement that appraisers have been doing for years is if the house is 30 by 50, which is 1,500 square feet, you measure 30 feet, exterior measurement, you measure 50 feet, exterior measurement, 30 times 50, 1,500 square feet. If that entire first floor is finished, which 99.9% of the time the entire first floor is finished, then that's 1,500 square feet. Now, gross living area. For appraisers, this means specifically finished space above grade. So I want you all to picture that 1,500 square foot rectangular ranch house I just described. The first floor, of course, is completely finished. That is gross living area. Now, let's say the basement is also completely finished. Under ANSI, that is gross building area, which includes finished, partially finished, or unfinished areas that are not included in the gross living area. And I see I've got fished instead of finished on that slide. I'll have to fix it. But at any rate, I had to make a note for myself. So gross building area, let me give you another example for that 1,500 square foot ranch. Let's assume that half of the basement was finished and half was unfinished. It was storage, furnace, water heater, whatever. So you'd have 750 square feet of finished area below grade and 750 square feet of unfinished area below grade. And that would be included in the gross building area, but it's not in the gross living area. Hang on to your hats. You might need more Excedrin until we're done. Now, the sloped ceilings and the stairs are going to be a big new thing for all of us, and they're going to be a challenge. And this is exactly what Justin was talking about, because we've got old houses in Pennsylvania. We've got old houses with sloped ceilings and not high ceilings. And we've got people in a 1.5-story home. They have bedrooms on those levels. They are using them. They consider them living space. We consider them living space as realtors because they're heated and they're functional. But here's what ANSI says. In rooms with sloped ceilings, finished space is measured from the 5-foot mark on any sloped ceiling or wall, with no addition for the width of any exterior wall. Now, Fannie Mae has also had the 5-foot rule for a long time, which means appraisers may have already been measuring differently than you, but we're going to get deeper into what ANSI says. Stairs are included within the exterior dimensions and square footage of the lowest finished level. And you can't count the slope space below a staircase on 2 levels. I'm going to show you illustrations later of what they mean with staircases, but basically, if you're talking about a 2-story home with stairs from the first floor to the basement, stairs from the first floor to the second floor, you are only going to count those stairs in square footage one time. You're not going to count it the other times. Are we having fun yet? Okay, garage. An attached garage measurement begins at the exterior corner and ends at the start or beginning of the interior wall with no addition for the width of the interior wall. Dormer. Dormers are going to be very interesting. I have another slide where we talk about dormers. The width of a dormer equals interior measurements plus the addition of both exterior walls. So figure this dormer coming out from the roof. You're going to measure, but you're also going to include generally 6 inches on either side for the exterior walls. The length goes from the inside corner to the start or beginning of the outside wall, only this time you don't add for the thickness of the exterior wall. So when you're going side to side on the dormer, the width, you do count exterior wall. When you're going from the room out to the end of the dormer, you do not include the thickness of the exterior wall. And the dormer has to be usable space. Adjoining spaces. Now, this is something we all run into. When an area that is not part of the finished living area, so it's a garage, shares a common wall with any finished living area. So we have an attached garage. This is what I have at my house. It connects to my utility mudroom and, into my house. Treat the common wall as the exterior wall for the finished living area. So I would count 6 inches of wall space in those rooms. Exterior dimensions, if we have interior measurements. To calculate the width of an exterior wall, we're going to add 5/10 of a foot or 6 inches for each exterior wall, not to exceed actual exterior dimensions. They want you to use actual exterior dimensions whenever possible. Well, we were just talking about dormers, and so we know dormers are in Cape Cods. And quite frankly, folks, there's no way the appraiser can hover on a hoverboard 15 feet in the air to measure the exterior of the second floor that's not the same footprint as the first floor. That's why you're going to have to use interior measurements. Now, above and below grade, no statement of finished living area should be reported without the distinct separation of above and below grade areas. Many of our MLS systems are already doing this, and that's enormously helpful to appraisers, because when I am doing an appraisal on a property that has below grade finished area, the best comp for that property is another property which has below grade finished area, but I will only know that if you are kind enough to put it in the MLS that way so I can look at it and figure it out. Finished gross building area. So gross building area, another term, is any enclosed area which meets the criteria of gross living area. It's finished, it's functional, it's heated, possibly cooled, but is not directly accessible without leaving the continuous finished main living area. So I want you to think about the bonus room. Someone has a 2-car garage. They put a bonus room over the garage. You access that room by going up a flight of stairs from the garage. It's a man cave, it's a she cave, it's a whatever you want to call it. It's heated, it's finished, but it is not contiguous. And again, the best thing I can do as an appraiser is try to find another comparable which has that feature, because then I'm trying to figure out what is this feature worth in the marketplace. I see there's one thing there in chat. Below grade. Rob, I'm getting to that. Hang in there and be patient. I promise I am. It's another slide. Okay. So, partially finished gross building area. Any enclosed area which would not be properly defined by either finished or unfinished. Any space which is at a level of finished considered that of finished, but it might be missing a ceiling. It might be missing a floor covering, okay? And that's partially finished GBA. So we've all been in the house where they did a lower level family room, but they didn't do every single thing. Now I'm going to show you a picture. This is from my MLS. This particular property was the discussion for 20 minutes at our last board of directors meeting, because one of our directors is also an appraiser, and he said, well, I don't think it should be counted because it's not finished. And we all sat there and looked at it and said, okay. They kind of did the industrial look and they painted the ductwork and everything, and it looks sharp. There is carpeting on the floor. There's drywall on the walls. Obviously, they're using it as living space. You can see the couch and the TV. We went back and forth. I'm not always the most patient person in the world. And I finally said, folks, till we decide this thing's going to be pending. And guess what? It's pending and it's going to close. So whatever. But here's another interesting reason I brought this in. The MLS staff looked at this and said, I don't think it should be counted as finished. Sent a message to the listing agent. Listing agent talked to seller. Seller produced not just one, two appraisals where this space was counted as finished. So you see what I am saying. This is going to be very, very, very confusing to consumers. And I don't like it when we can confuse consumers. I think that's a really bad look for us. And I think most of you agree with me. Now, ANSI gets into floor finishes. So these can include decorative concrete finishes, but no bare or painted concrete is included in any statement of finished square footage. So sometimes you get in the homes where they've done, and the actual term for it escapes me, they throw out these colored chips and they put an epoxy type thing over it in a basement. Who has seen what I'm talking about? Yeah. Mike, what do they call that? Do you know? Mike Desnoyers, do you know what that's called? Can't think.
It's a
I'm drawing a
painted
blank.
floor.
It's an epoxy.
It's an epoxy. Okay. That would count under ANSI because it's not bare concrete. And it's the kind of thing that people like to do, especially below grade, if they're at all worried that something might happen and they might get water in there in severe weather. So at any rate, bare concrete, ANSI is saying you don't count. I've been in homes with bare concrete floors that are painted in basements and they have put down area rugs and the kids play down there. But ANSI is what ANSI is, and I didn't write ANSI. So Fannie and ANSI agree, and Rob, this is getting into your question. Above grade is entirely above grade, the entire level. Defined as space on any level or a dwelling which has living area and no earth adjacent to any exterior wall. Now, every so often you'll get, and Rob, I know you know the kind of property I'm talking about, a mid-century split level home where you could have several levels, and some of them are below grade because there is earth adjacent to an exterior wall. It may be only adjacent to one out of 4 exterior walls, but per the guidelines, it's still below grade. Now, lower level space on any level. So again, if you had a multi-level split, which has living area, finished, partially finished, unfinished, garage, etc., is accessible by interior stairs, and has earth adjacent to any exterior wall. If any portion of a floor level is below grade, the entire level is considered below grade. So I want you guys to all visualize the classic bi-level, which we have all over Pennsylvania, and you've all been in there. And this bi-level, at the rear of it, you come out at grade. There are French doors, sliding doors, whatever, you come out at grade. However, when you turn around and face the front of the home, I'm going to demonstrate on me. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. Right about here on me is the windowsill for the front, and right outside that windowsill is dirt. Okay, might be a full-size window, might be not a little basement window, but not quite as big as the windows on the second floor, but there's dirt right outside that window, and that is considered below grade. I got some chats here. Let me see what people are saying. Stephanie, they're recording it, so I think that's going to answer your question. But Allison has it, and Allison, you may share it, but I don't want, people, if you want to use this as a course, I've got a couple instructors here, please get my permission, would be all I would ask. Now, here's an interesting thing with ANSI. This is your get out of jail free card. Agents are permitted to report the square footage of a dwelling as total living area or total square footage without a separate distinction between above and below grade for advertising purposes only, as long as the lower level is finished. Whew. That is a big get out of jail free card for you, because I know you want to advertise how many square feet of living space there are in a house, because consumers, pay attention to that. This gives you, for advertising purposes only, the ability to do that under ANSI. Now, if your MLS has other guidelines, that's between you and your MLS. I'm just telling you what ANSI says for now. Okay, now vertical measurement. This is where things get hairy. Height requirements. In order to be included in finished living area calculations, all space must have a minimum ceiling height of at least 7 feet. No obstructions such as beams or duct work can drop below the 7 feet. If you've got a heating duct or a run that's below 7 feet, that eliminates the whole area. So let me show you a picture. If this is not 7 feet, it doesn't count. Now, just look at that picture for a minute. Okay, there's carpeting, there's heat in there. You can see off over here is the heat. So show of hands, please. How many of you have listed or sold a house like that with a bedroom up there, and they are using it as a bedroom? And if you and I all of a sudden start to report that there's no bedrooms on the second floor, we're going to have a homeowner mightily annoyed with us. Can we all agree with that? They're going to be, what's wrong with you, Kathy? I've got bedrooms up there. That's where my kids sleep. And you're going to be like, yeah, but they're not ANSI bedrooms. And this is going to be the problem we're all going to have. They're not ANSI bedrooms. Oh boy, I can see it coming. Okay. Now, this is another example. And again, these are just pictures I found from my MLS and whatever. Same idea. And here we've got a double whammy. We don't have a 7-foot ceiling, and we've also got a sloped area. And again, clearly the people who live in this house are using the space. There's a closet here. I don't know if this is another closet or what. There's a chair here. They're using it as living space. But ANSI appraiser, or an appraiser doing an appraisal, there's no such thing as an ANSI appraiser. An appraiser doing an appraisal to ANSI guidelines is not going to count this as living space. It's heated. It's finished. The family uses it. The owners use it, whoever. It's not going to be counted. Now, one of the people who is on the Real Property Valuation Committee, who is actually also very well connected on a national level because of being chairperson of the Appraisal Standards Board, sent an email to Fannie Mae. And here's her email. I reproduced it. Can you please help? I have several people asking questions about Q16 in the recently released Fannie Mae guidelines for measuring GLA, and I want to be sure I'm telling them the correct answer. Now, folks, I'll get to chat in a minute, but pay attention to this, because this is where the firestorm is going to begin for you and me. Two-story home. First floor has 600 square feet with living room, dining room, kitchen, half bath. Second floor does not meet ANSI standard for ceiling height. It has 600 square feet with 3 bedrooms and 1 bath. The answer to the question below seems to say that I put the total room count in both the improvement section on page 1 and in the grid on page 2 as 6 rooms, 3 bedrooms, and 1.5 baths. That's what it has. But then report the gross living area as 600 and then report the other 600 down here. And here is the answer from Fannie Mae. This, you are correct. This is how we want to see the square footage and room count. So this is your listing. Buyer's agent sends you a copy of the appraisal. You share it with your seller because that's what you're going to do. You and your seller and the listing agent and the buyer agent all look at each other and scratch your heads and say, what the heck? This house is bigger than 600 square feet. Do you all see that problem? I'm going to go to chat for a second. They did start April 1st. Cindy is saying, is the space encompassed by the center of the room exclusive of the slant considered living space? Scott, hold on, I'm getting to that. It's gone up, son. Will the whole room not be counted? Nope, not going to be counted in square footage. It'll be a room count like I'm showing on this slide, but it's not going to be counted in square footage because it doesn't meet the ANSI standards. Wouldn't we just measure the 7-foot or high area? Heather, hold on, I got another thing. I'll have another slide that's going to show you what you do with that. So what you're paying attention to here now is you thought you had a 1,200 square foot house, 6'3", 1.1. The appraisal is done to ANSI measurement standards. So the appraiser is going to report, yeah, there's 6 rooms, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, 600 square feet. Now, a reasonable person to me looking at that would say, how the heck can I get 6 rooms in 600 square feet? That's, if they're all the same size, 100 square foot per room. And that's a really small room. Okay, it's 10 by 10. Then you would have this down here. So this is, I can't stress enough how much this is going to be confusing to consumers, confusing to sellers, confusing to owners. And I don't have a cure for it. I'm just trying to help you figure out what you're going to do. Now, I will, don't worry, I will get back to the height thing. Let me do a couple other things for you. So bay windows. Okay. This bay window counts on both levels in finished square footage because it has a foundation under it. Has to have a foundation under it. Now, you've all been inside this house. This would be a 60s ranch. You've got this bay window here that doesn't go all the way down to the floor. It does not count. There's no foundation under it. Then this bay window does not count. No foundation under it. Even if it goes all the way to the floor, it does not count. Okay, deep breath. Guess what's next? Rounding. ANSI wants measurements in tenths of a foot. So if your measuring device doesn't put things in tenths of a foot, if instead it gives it to you in feet and inches, this is your conversion chart. 1 inch is 8/10, 2 inches 0.17, 3 inches 0.25, 4 inches 0.33, 5 inches 0.42, 6 inches 0.50. That makes sense. It's half a foot. And it goes on and on. Now, confession. I have often rounded when I've been so close. Now, rounding's allowed in ANSI to a degree, but I'll get to that in a second. When you say that 600 is down there, what is it listed under, Heather? It's listed as an additional feature on the report. Bob, bump out space needs to go floor to ceiling. Okay, whatever. So that's what you're supposed to be doing with that. Now, the rule of thumb with rounding from ANSI, 5/10 of a foot or less is rounded down. Anything over 5/10 is rounded up. You probably have not been doing this when you have measured rooms for MLS. I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't know if you have used half a foot, a quarter of a foot, or whatever, but 1/10 of a foot are what appraisers are supposed to use. And believe me, when I took this course, they were really into the weeds on exterior measurements and, you know, making sure that you don't include the cap on the edge of the siding. It was very interesting. Now, second level measurements. Use exterior measurements when possible to calculate all finished usable space. But if the interior measurements are all that are available, which again, we don't hover in midair, and add the width of all exterior walls except where one wall adjoins with another finished living space. And I'm not trying to turn anyone into an appraiser. I'm just telling you what you might find in a report and look at. So here's a sketch of a cape. Okay. We're not going to do the sloping headroom on this slide, but we are going to do the dormer. So here on the dormer, if you can see my mouse, the width of the dormer plus the interior equals interior measurements plus the addition of both exterior walls. So if this dormer was 3 feet across, and we're saying 6 inches for each exterior wall, that would be 4 feet. The length measurement, actual length from the inside corner, which would actually be here, to the start or beginning of the outside wall, but no addition for the thickness of the exterior wall. It's more than a little bit confusing, in my humble opinion. It's more than a little bit confusing. Diana, will owners want to argue that the smaller appraised square footage should equate to reductions in taxes? Diana, I don't think you have a snowball's chance, and you know where, of getting an assessment office to pay attention to anyone's measurements other than their own. Unless it would be a very egregious error and the homeowner could prove, look, you doubled my square footage because I don't know what you were doing that day. Maybe you had a 3 cocktail lunch when you measured my house, but I mean, you'd have to prove it and you'd have to file an appeal and anyhow, but I don't think you're going to have county assessment offices doing this. And when you delve into how counties measure property, how counties identify square footage in property, that is another thing that is a complete patchwork across the United States. There's not uniformity. They don't necessarily do it the same way, even within counties in Pennsylvania, let alone counties in other states. Now, let's talk about stairs. So this is a 50 by 35 foot ranch, folks, okay? And what we have here is we've got a stairway. And you count the stairs on the level they serve or where they start and ascend. So pretend you're looking at a basement. Okay, this is the basement of this home. We've got a flight of stairs going up. Let's assume for right now, this is just a ranch style home. They're included with the exterior dimensions of the lowest finished space, if this is finished. Upper level areas include finished functional space only. So lower levels finished, we're going to take 50 times 35. That's our square footage. We're going to use exterior measurements. We're including the stairs. Okay. Now, my picture, I couldn't get my picture as big. Basement is 1,750 square feet. Assume the stairs measure 12 feet by 3.2 feet or 38 square feet. You then subtract 38 square feet from 1,750 square feet to get 1,712 square feet. Are you having fun yet? And I will tell you, stairways are one of the things many appraisers have not done it this way. They just have not. It's 38 square feet. Is that significant? I don't know. Could be, maybe not. Could not matter at all, depending upon the other relevant characteristics of the property. And I will get to that before we're done here. So let's just turn this into a two-story home. Excuse me. So we have a finished basement. We have a first floor. We have a second floor. It's a rectangle. Our ceiling height is fine. We're taking 38 square feet off of the first level and the second level for that staircase, because the stairs, as you know, are stacked on top of each other. You've got this flight and then this flight. So the total gross living area is 1,924 square feet. And again, in the past, that might have been reported as 2,000 square feet because it was a nice little rectangle. So now you've got the difference there, and now it's not just 38 square feet, it's 38 times 2 square feet. So I'm going to pause for a second because I want to see your lovely faces, because I love your faces. Who has ever sold a property to an engineer? I would like your hand up if you have ever sold a property to an engineer. So Chris, how was that? Go ahead and unmute and tell us about selling to an engineer, because they are a special group of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I had several engineers, but one, he was literally, questioning exactly what's measured. He came and measured the property. When the one he decided to put an offer in, he wanted to measure it himself to make sure it really was what it was.
My advice for years in class has been, if you are selling a home to an engineer, you help them measure it and you hold the stupid end of the tape and you let them measure it however they want to. There was actually a lawsuit in Center County years ago where an engineer had the argument that hallways and closets should not be counted as square footage because he couldn't live in hallways and closets. So I'm just saying, if you've got a consumer who is concerned about it, please practice risk reduction. If they say, gee, this square footage doesn't look right to me, I'm not sure. You've got appraisers. I know there's a couple on this class today. See if they are willing for a fee to appraise or to measure a property for you to ANSI standards or whatever standards the client wants. You can measure it however the client directs you to do so. But maybe you might not want that liability yourself. I'm just saying, because I really like to always keep you guys out of trouble as much as I possibly can. Okay. Now, what about bonus rooms? So we all have seen the bonus rooms, and this is one where assume these stairs go down into a garage. This is a space over a garage. I'm not even going to get into the slope ceilings on this one, but understand this gets reported as gross building area, not gross living area, because it's not contiguous. And this would be reported on a line item on a Fannie Mae appraisal report. So again, the best possible comp for an appraiser doing an appraisal on a house with this, can I find another home that also had a bonus room of similar finish to this one? Which is, by the way, please give us as much information in the MLS as you can, and please include lots and lots and lots of pictures, because this is actually a very nicely finished bonus room. Okay. Now let's move on. Foyers. So folks, we only count space in this foyer on one level because it's all open here. No one's living in midair. So this is a two-story foyer. You've all been in a home configured like this. If you would be standing here by the love seat and looking toward the front door, that's a whole two-story foyer. You're only counting the space once. This is how most appraisers have been doing this for a long time. This house over here, a more contemporary design, same idea. Now, when you get into things like catwalks and, you know, what am I trying to think of? You've got a loft area, and then you've got just a hallway taking you to the loft area. ANSI says include the hallway, but not the vertical space that's open to below. Are we having fun yet? Let me see. If a bonus room accesses directly, yes, Rob, that's exactly right. The key is, does it have direct access? That's exactly right. Now, foyers and two-story rooms. So here's one with two-story room, and you can see the beam here. So this room is open to the second floor on the other side of the beam. On this side of the beam, there's actual a floor up there, and there's living space. You're only going to count this space one time because you can't live in midair. Okay. Condos. Now, as you all know, I live in the town too small to have a McDonald's or a Starbucks, so I don't have a ton of condos. But you guys have condos. Now, this has been a Fannie Mae guideline for a long time, and the ANSI guy, Mr. Thomas, doesn't seem to think that it will change with ANSI. So you're talking interior measurements only, paint to paint. That makes a lot of sense. If you think of a high-rise condo, you can't even do an exterior measurement on one unit in there, because you could do an exterior measurement of the entire building, but you wouldn't be able to do the one condo. So it would be paint to paint. Now, let's talk about sun porches and Florida rooms. So we see these, they're becoming more popular. I love the fact that in Florida, they call them Florida rooms, and in Carolinas, they call them a Carolina room. So the one on the left, clearly still a porch. You don't have heat out there. You've got a floor covering. It looks like an indoor-outdoor carpeting. You've got windows. You've got some lattice work. But it's not living space finished to and heated. The one on the right, though, that's finished. They've got a ceramic tile floor. They've got heating and air conditioning, permanent windows, and it is finished in this example commensurate with the rest of the property. I just listed a house. It's going to go live as soon as my photographer is done. They took what had been an enclosed screen porch and they finished it. And it's commensurate with the interior finish of the rest of the home. Okay, and they call it their family room. Now, here's your ANSI guidance. Is it heated and cooled? Now, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds with you, and I'm really trying not to. ANSI does have things that connect it to a geographic region. So clearly, if I have a house in Hawaii, I don't need heat. If I have a house in the Florida Keys, I probably don't need heat. If I have a house in Alaska, I probably don't need air conditioning. Okay. So, but you can dig around. That's something I don't think you guys have to worry about. But is it heated and cooled? So many of you for years have gone to look at that listing, and it's got a very nicely finished room that used to be a porch, but it's completely finished. It's finished to the same level as the rest of the house, and it functions as a normal part of the floor plan, but they didn't put heating and cooling in it. So quick show of hands. How many of you ever said to that property owner, you know, if you put heating and cooling out here, put a mini split out here, they're going to be able to count it. The appraiser will count it as living space. Who's ever done that? Yeah, good idea to do it, Mark, because they will. And we're seeing those mini splits all over the place. They're very functional. People are liking them. So anyhow, I'm looking at some of your faces. Jack Gross, you look like you're about ready to have a meltdown over this. Yeah, it's the geographic region. What if it's heated but not cooled? You know, Chris, that becomes a judgment call, because you know what? You've got a paddle fan out there. It's contiguous to the rest of the house. The question the ANSI people would tell you is, can you keep it as comfortable as the rest of the house? I would be inclined as an agent This is as an agent, not as an appraiser. I would include that. I would make a comment in my public remarks of MLS. The family room off the kitchen was formerly an enclosed porch. It's now a family room. It does not have central air. I would just tell the buyer what I know. Let the buyer figure out what they're going to do. There may not be enough Excedrin available to us. I can see Bob Permez also took his ANSI course. Does it offer the same function and utility as the rest of the house? So you're looking at function and utility. So back here to, is it finished to the same level? Let's talk for a minute about finished basements, because folks, finished basements run the gamut from really awful to really nice. And you guys all know what I'm talking about. Every one of us has been in a house that has a finished basement, and it's got warping masonite paneling and ancient indoor-outdoor carpeting, which has the distinct odor of cat pee. And it's got a stained drop ceiling because there were plumbing leaks. And, you know, we look at that and we're like, you know what, this is actually a negative, because the buyer is going to look at it and say, I've got to get all this stuff out of here, and then maybe I'll refinish it. On the other hand, we have all been in the basement of a house where they did the basement, they finished it. They used drywall. They used a drywall ceiling. They used a nice quality floor covering. Maybe it was a laminate, maybe it was carpeting, whatever. They may have full-size windows down there, or they walk out at grade level at the back. And that is very much the same level as the rest of the house. So there's no, one of my difficulties with this is no one size really fits all, because every house is different. Now, plans and specs. Tell you a story about plans and specs. I was doing a relocation appraisal once, and relocation companies always check the square footage between, they get two appraisers and they check the square footage. Are you two within I think it's like 100 square feet of each other? And when I was at the property, I was talking to the owner and I was measuring, and she said, oh, I have the plans. And I said, okay, great. And she got them out. And I said, you know, the measurement here doesn't agree with mine. I got 26 feet, not 24. And she said, oh, that's right. We changed the plans. We had them add 2 feet onto that room. Well, the other appraiser used the plans and specs and didn't measure. So it was a very interesting situation. So when somebody gives you plans and specs, the very first question you always ask is, did you build this exactly to these plans and specs, or were they changed? And if the builder is reporting square footage, did they use ANSI standards? Now, the Home Builders Association apparently is in love with ANSI standards, but I can't speak for how a builder would calculate square footage, but I would certainly say you and I need to ask a lot of questions. Now, assessment records. I just put a random assessment card in here. The assessment office does not furnish sketches of properties for you and me to rely on when we're entering data into MLS. We have to confirm it. As I told you, in my county, some of the sketches are right. This house, I know this house well. It's actually right. Mr. McCormick was chief assessor and he measured it to a T. It's exactly right. But I verified it, okay? May have been improperly measured by anyone's standards. So sometimes when a county reassessment is done, they do it in the summer and they hire college kids, and they are not necessarily the most diligent at what they are doing. So you can get all kinds of stuff. So are you confused yet? Wait until you have to try to explain this to a consumer, because this is, I believe, challenging for us as real estate professionals. And I believe it is beyond challenging for many lay people. I want a quick show of hands. How many of you think this is going to be very difficult to explain to some of your consumers? Yeah, and I don't know an easy answer for it other than to say, you know, here's what they're saying. So I'm going to now talk to you about some other things that I hope will be helpful to you. So obviously, the people who write the ANSI courses, the guy who wrote the book, absolutely fixated on square footage. And we have trained people to become fixated on square footage. There's a problem with that. So here's the problem. As my friend Bob will confirm, appraisers look at relevant characteristics, and those are defined as those physical, functional, or economic influences on value. Square footage is only one of these, and it may absolutely be irrelevant to what the property sells for. I'm going to show you two properties my company sold. One on the left, one of my agents sold. It was on a company listing. This is a mobile home they put that siding on. $347.22 per square foot. Did not appraise. Buyer bought it anyway. Here's what you can't see. Over here, front of this place, that's the bike trail through the Pine Creek Valley. On the other side of the house, oh, that's Pine Creek, where you can go kayaking and fish. The relevant characteristics for recreational property, I would put square footage at the bottom of the list of what buyers are looking for, because buyers understand I can change the improvement, but if I don't have frontage on a rail trail and frontage on Pine Creek, I can't get them. This was one we listed and sold. $486.70 per square foot with 123 acres. Folks, if you are adding in acreage, if you are not doing a uniform lot size like you would do in a cookie cutter subdivision, more land is going to completely skew almost all of the time a price per square foot analysis. This is available in my market right now. It's a farm. It's on the market for $1.2 million, which is $919.74 per square foot. Oh, but there's 302 acres. So can you see with that how saying that our rule of thumb that we're always going to look at is always going to be square footage? That's not going to work all of the time. Rob says, so my biggest confusion is, are we going to entirely need to measure our own square footage and not go by tax records? Rob, I would say, excuse me, talk to your broker and see what your broker wants you to do. I know that there are a lot of markets where appraisers will, for a fee, measure a property. So that's something to think about. My MLS, we do measure properties. I have always measured properties because I'm an appraiser. But I'll tell you what, I think appraisers are still confused by ANSI measurements, and it's going to take everyone a while to get used to. Now, if you don't measure to ANSI measurements, standards, I would put a comment in, not measured to ANSI standards. If you relied on courthouse records, I would put a comment in. I relied on public tax assessment records, which may or may not be correct. You would want to cover your butt. Some days there is not enough fabric in the world to cover our butts. So again, relevant characteristics, do we have land? Now, let me show you one other example. I was digging around, and these two properties are within a block of each other in the Valemont section of Williamsport. And they are 693 square feet different. One is larger than the other. One sold at $97.42 per square foot. It had 4,876 square feet. It sold for $475. The other one sold for $98.02 per square foot, 4,183 square feet. So it's less square footage, sold for $410. I have to always ask myself as an appraiser, what made the difference in this prices and the prices of these two properties, both sold? Was it square footage, or was it, I don't know, kitchen remodeling, new hardwood flooring, new bathrooms? When you fixate just on square footage, you may not be seeing the forest for the trees. That would be my take on it. Yes, Bob, exactly right. And Heather is saying this is a concern. Okay, but back to Bob just commented, and I'm going to ask Bob, do you also agree that if all we do is focus on square footage, we may be missing other relevant characteristics? I don't know where Bob Permez is. He's here somewhere. He's commenting, but I
I'm
can't see.
here. I'm here.
Would you agree?
Yeah. All different factors affect how we come about what the value is. It could be condition, it could be land, it could be frontage along a lake, such as what you're experiencing, or, you know, you'd be down in Florida, you have beachfront. I've seen houses being scraped just because they want to have that beachfront property. So this is just one piece of the puzzle,
Thank
but
you,
it
Bob.
should be disclosed. You know,
I
where
agree
you're
with
getting
you.
that.
It's one piece, but I think we also are going to have to educate our buyers that what drives value for them is not just this one piece of square footage. It's all the other things we're talking about. When was the kitchen remodeled? When were the bathrooms remodeled? Were all the floor coverings replaced? Does it have brand new windows? Does it have a brand new HVAC system? I mean, I think an educated buyer looks at all of the factors of the house, and that leads me to just say, you know, you had this house here, you have these two houses. Size matters, but quality, condition, amenities. At the end of the day, and folks, you guys have been in class with me, you've all heard me say this a gazillion times, the market determines value. It's not what I think. It's not what Bob Permez thinks. It's not what Chris Rader thinks. We all know when we list a house, hopefully we're saying to our seller every single time, you have a theory about what your house will sell for. I have a theory about what your house will sell for. But unless or until we've got a buyer who is willing to pay X amount of dollars, it's just a theory. I don't have all the answers, but I am glad to talk about any of this or answer any of your questions for you. It is a complicated issue. I'm not going to go into solar panels today, Nighty, because we don't want to go down that path. I will just say this to you. It really depends upon if they're owned or leased. It depends upon how old they are, and it depends upon what the market thinks of them. Back to stairs. What about stairs, multiple stairs? Do you only count one set of stairs? So if you had an old Victorian, that's a great question, Heather, and you had front stairs and back stairs, which I often see in old Victorian homes. And let's just say you have one flight of basement stairs, maybe they were under the back stairs, but you didn't have a flight of stairs under the main staircase to the basement. So your first floor, you're going to include the main staircase. You're going to exclude the back stairs because they're with the lower level. I hope that is kind of helpful to you. So Chris, with an MLS, with those first things you do is you figure out what is your ceiling height. If your ceiling height is below 7 feet, you can't count the square footage. You can count the rooms, but you can't count the square footage. What about
Melanie,
rooms with slope ceilings? Go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry. So like I actually got a call from an appraiser yesterday, you know, on a previous listing of mine that sold, and he was asking some questions about it. And we were talking a little bit about these changes, and maybe I misunderstood him, but it sounded like he was saying that we would measure only the part of the room that was 7 foot, you know, at least 7 foot high, and not the parts where it was less.
That's correct. That's correct. And I should have put that, I'll put that slide in.
Okay.
Here's one of the other huge headaches for appraisers, and Bob probably can guess what I'm going to say. We're using comparable sales data out of the MLS, and we have absolutely no idea how the house was measured, if the house was measured, or if somebody used courthouse records. And so we could, as appraisers, inadvertently be comparing an apple to an orange because we don't know. You follow what I'm saying? So wait a second. What about rooms with sloped ceilings, but only the center of the room is 7 feet high? Kathy, none of it counts. If it's below 7 feet, none of it counts. Now, let's just say the ceiling is 7.5 feet in the center. Chris is exactly right. You're only going to count the area that is 7.5 feet. Once it starts to slope, not counting it. Can we go back to the shared wall with the garage example? Heather, we can. It basically, and let me just see if I can find a slide that will let me show you this. All right. So where's that picture I have in here somewhere? Okay. Oh, geez. Okay, so Heather, this is a house, ranch house. This is a garage. This is an added on family room. This is an added on bedroom. What ANSI says is you would measure the garage from the interior of this wall to the exterior wall. This dimension would be all exterior, but the interior wall for this measurement, you would include the 6 inches for the wall. Don't know if that's making sense to you or not, but basically this house is what, 52 by 30? So that's what you're going to use for the square footage of this part, except for this is kind of a cutout area and you'd have to subtract that. So they're giving the extra 6 inches of the wall between the garage and the house, to the finished area. Well, don't know if that makes sense or not. Okay, thanks. Go over buy levels again if they are common in our market. Okay, I'm going to have to add a buy level slide for this, I think. And we should picture your typical buy level, folks. You've got, as you're facing this, you've got a door in the center, you've got windows at the bottom part, you've got windows at the top part. Who knows? One end of the house might have a garage and the other end might have a family room in the lower level. You walk in that front door, you go up a half flight and you're into the living area. That's going to be a living room, kitchen, 3 bedrooms and a bath, and your typical 70s by level. You go down a half flight of stairs. Now that area may be completely unfinished, maybe half garage and half finished, maybe 100% finished. But here's the deal. If there is dirt up against a wall, against any wall on that level, it's below grade. A lot of people built bi-levels into a hill or into a slope. So when you're in the bi-level basement and you're looking out the back door, you've got an at-grade level door. You can walk out of it. It's a sliding door, it's a French door, whatever. But when you turn around and go out front to the front of the house and you're in the lower level, the basement level, you look right outside that window in the family room and there's dirt right up against the windowsill. I don't know, Ashley, how much it's going to, is it Ashley? I don't know how much it's going to affect things at all in that. I mean, go figure, Fannie Mae. We're in the middle of one of the craziest real estate markets we've ever had. People are paying well over list price. People are, in my opinion, paying more than they ought to in many cases for property, but they didn't ask me. And I don't know that your buyers are paying attention to square footage as much as they are paying attention to the fact there are no other homes for sale. That's where I think most buyers are. How many of you agree with that? Yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting world.
So what value do you give those rooms that are living space, but you can't count as square footage?
That are non-contiguous. So Mark, you're going to love my answer. It depends. Depends on the quality of finish, and it depends upon what I can mine out of the market in terms of what that's worth to a typical purchaser. So remember, appraisers price property in terms of the typical purchaser, not the 1 in a million person. And so many of you have heard me say this. If you're at a listing appointment and the seller says to you, hey, Mark, for just the right person, my house would be perfect because they have a 12-car garage and a bowling alley in their basement. That means they expect you to find the one buyer who wants a 12-car garage and a bowling alley in the basement. Those features may not be relevant to the typical purchaser. So generally speaking, do I think that buyers seem to like bonus rooms? Yes, they do. You're going to have to dig around. You're going to have to find a comp that had a bonus room. And how much more did it sell for? I'm seeing a question here. Fannie and Freddie. No, NAR is not suggesting realtors do this. I would just say what we already said before. However, you are measuring a house, please disclose how you measured it. And let's just say you list a brand new construction and the builder did follow plans and his own plans. And he says to you, you know, this house is 2,400 square feet. I would put in the MLS, I would scan the plans in and I would say, per the builder, this is 2,400 square feet. Folks, remember, whenever possible, you want to shift risk. You want the least amount of risk on you that you can get away with. So when you do that, if it's brand new construction and Jack Rose puts it in MLS and says, hey, Mr. Bob Builder says there's 2,400 square foot here, but Jack is now saying, I'm not saying there's 2,400 square feet. Bob Builder is saying there's 2,400 square feet.
Melanie, well, here's the thing. So you're saying that as agents, we don't have to comply with this for the MLS?
No, you do not. You do
So-
not. But what I know you're going to get, we know when an appraisal does not meet contract price, because I hate to hear the phrase, the appraisal was low. The appraisal does not meet contract price. We know what happens in the real world. If you're the buyer agent and I'm the listing agent, your buyer sends you a copy of the appraisal, which they get because the federal law says they have a right to have it. They send it to you. You send it to me and you say, Melanie, we've got a problem because we're not at contract price in this appraisal. What can we do? Now, let me tell you something else that's not ANSI, but it's useful for you guys to know. The Real Property Valuation Committee is working really hard with NAR to suggest that we can get all of the major lenders to agree to one procedure for a reconsideration of value. You have it with VA. Those of you who have done VA know you have Tidewater. And Tidewater is the thing that says that, you know, the appraiser notifies the lender, hey, this is not going to come in at contract price. There's a window of time, I think it's 48 or 72 hours. The lender reaches out to the two agents. So Jack, if that's you and me, they would reach out to us and say, hey, the appraiser says this is not going to meet contract price. We have that window of opportunity to provide, to suggest other comparables for the appraiser to consider. And I have had some work that way with me for Tidewater. They've actually changed their mind and some not. But what the committee is saying to NAR is there ought to be a specific process for someone who wants value reconsidered. And it should be the
Well,
same.
here's the other thing. This is the other thing too, and people like Bob Premise with our board has always had, when the appraisers come into this catch-22 is he's appraising the property based on ANSI rules and regulations or whatever. We're not putting the information into the MLS based on ANSI rules and whatever. How are you comparing apples to apples at that point?
That's going to be a huge part of the problem. And Charles has a question: what effect will this have on appraisal waivers? If they're offering an appraisal waiver, Fannie Mae ostensibly feels like they have enough information in their database to do an automatic valuation model appraisal on that property. Again, I don't know what square footage Fannie may have in their database. If they had an appraisal done before ANSI went into effect, then that appraiser may well have not measured to ANSI guidelines. So whatever Fannie Mae is looking at may not be the square footage that you'd come up with today if you measured it to ANSI. This is why this is going to be such a nightmare, because appraisers and agents were all looking at data in the MLS. And we're hoping it's reliable data, but we can't independently verify it. In fact, for years, I've said to my appraisal students to add a disclaimer in their appraisal reports along the lines of information obtained from the Greater Lehigh Valley Association of Realtors MLS is believed to be accurate, but I am unable to independently verify it because I can't. What would happen if I showed up at Kathy's listing that she sold 2 months ago, knocked on the door and said to the seller, hey, I'm an appraiser. I'm just here to measure this place to make sure I have the right square footage. They would not let me in their house, and they would call Kathy and say, some crazy lady was on my doorstep today wanting to measure my house. That's the problem we have. And in my part of Pennsylvania, they have guns. I had to say that, guys.
So let me ask you this question then, in light of that. Was there any mention, anything that you've heard or seen that requiring us in the future to measure properties based on from a realtor, from an agent standpoint?
There is nothing out there. I think it's a pipe dream from, hold on. This guy, this is the guy who I took a course he wrote, and I also bought the book separately. You didn't have to buy the book. Mr. Thomas is a very nice man, but I do think he's a little delusional because he says the simplest thing would be for every MLS in the United States to require ANSI measurements. And I do not see that happening in the near future. I don't even see it happening in the far future. I don't know. Justin might, or Allison might know, we've got so darn many MLSs in the United States, and they already all do things differently. We have different platforms for MLS. You guys are bright. I'm not bright. I'm on a different platform. All of them handle data differently. I just can't imagine. Gordy says yes. There are videos with Hamp Thomas, and I would tell you to search those out. Tara, I believe, yes, as long as you're disclosing how you're reporting them and doing them, that's absolutely a good thing to do. It's always a good thing to disclose where you got your information. And it is never wrong to say, I don't know. Never be afraid to say, I don't know when you don't know. You are always better off saying, I don't know, as opposed to guessing at it. Other questions, Allison? How are we doing here? Yep, there she is. She's gonna light up.
We are supposed to end at 11:30, but whenever.
I will take questions till, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, we're not going
I
to
don't
kick you off. Don't worry.
I don't know that I have solutions other than I would really urge people to disclose how you came up with the measurements and be prepared to try to explain this to the consumers who are going to say to you, what the heck is wrong with this appraiser? They think my house only has 600 square feet. You're going to have that, guys. And see, the problem for you guys, for all of us who are agents, because I'm an agent too, agents are at the front lines. We're the ones who get all the flack. Okay? Fannie Mae's not getting any flack. I mean, they're insulated and isolated and everything else, and they're just sending out their little edicts, and they don't care that you and I might have a very unhappy homeowner that we're trying to explain to them. I understand that when your house was appraised 2 years ago, that appraiser said you had 2,300 square feet, but you know what? This appraiser used ANSI standards, and now they are saying you have 1,950 square feet. And you know, and I know, we are going to have conversations with people over that. How many of you agree? Yeah, because, hey, I'm a homeowner. Most of you are homeowners. If you weren't in the real estate business and you were a homeowner and you're looking at two appraisals side by side, and one says you got 2,300 square feet and one says 1,950 square feet, you'd be scratching your head as well. Charles, what you're talking about, I had heard rumor agents will be required to provide floor plans. Well, if you're going to participate in a bifurcated appraisal and provide information so an appraiser can do an appraisal at a desktop based upon the information you get, you would have to do that. I would say to you, all of you, before you consider even thinking about collecting data for desktop appraisals or bifurcated appraisals, first of all, you better check with your broker to see if he or she wants you to do it. Second of all, if you're a broker, you better check with your E&O coverage to see if you're covered for it. And third of all, let me tell you folks, it is a ton of liability for a very small fee. And I would run screaming from the room. My agents are not permitted to do it. That is my decision as a broker. Not going to happen. Can you show the slide with Cape Cod? Okay, sure can. Hold on, Kathy. Let me get to that. Let me bring it back up. I know I have it here somewhere. Well, I think I have it here somewhere. Let me share. That's not the one. Okay, so here's the Cape Cod. Now, let's assume for the purposes of your question that the sloping headroom on both sides, you see the dotted line, that's sloping headroom. Let's assume that's below 7.5 feet, but this part is 7.5 feet. So the appraiser would not count this. They count this. They measure the dormers, including exterior walls here, but not going this way. And this bathroom, as long as the ceiling is 7.5 feet, the square footage in the bathroom would be counted. The stairs are not going to be counted because they've already come up from the lower level. Is that helping you at all?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So for the sloping headroom, at what point in the slope can you, can you measure up to the 7-foot mark?
It has to be over 7 feet to be counted in square footage under ANSI.
Before you go too far with that 7 foot, it's 5 foot, 7 foot. You have to consider the 5 foot part.
That's right, Bob. Go ahead.
So basically what those dotted lines probably mean is the 5 foot mark, but at least half of that area has to be 7 foot. That's the rule.
Half of the whole area has to be
Half
at least
of
7.
the up and down area, you know, from front to back has to be 7 foot. So it's not what the width is, you know, it's, you know, basically if you're taking it from the dormer to the back of the house, that area, whatever that measurement is, and then you measure the 7 foot area, if that's at least half of that, you can count that whole area from 5 foot.
But not below 5 foot.
Not below 5 foot.
Right. And so what we sometimes see in a Cape Cod home, folks, that sloping headroom could be maybe only 4 feet, but people might have, I don't know, built-in dresser drawers there or put a dresser there or put something there.
That's right.
And again, the frustration for the homeowner is they consider it to be usable space because they're using it. If this is bedrooms upstairs and I've got dressers here under this sloping headroom wall, I consider I'm using the space. It is going to be very confusing. And can you repeat that rule? Somebody asked you to repeat what you just said, Bob.
Okay.
I can't remember for
All right.
what you said.
Basically what it is it's the 5 foot, 7 foot rule is how I kind of use it in my head. So what I'll go into the room and I'll measure how wide the actual, you know, wall to wall is. Say that's, you know, 16 foot. But those dormers are only 3 foot high or 2 foot high or whatever there are. You know, the knee walls rather, bad Bob, remembering wrong terms. The knee walls, wherever they are, it doesn't matter. It's still that 5 foot. So you measure from that imaginary 5 foot line. So again, going back to that 16-foot, if your ceiling is 8 foot wide and 7 foot high, all of that up to the 5 foot now gets counted. Now, if that, you don't have 8 foot of 7 foot area, then you have the problem.
We do. And one of the things Justin said is so true. We have old housing in Pennsylvania with, excuse me, low ceilings.
Right. You can get a 6 foot 8 inch ceiling, miss it by a few inches. And it's just, it's a rule is a rule is a rule, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
The thing of it is, like I said, you guys are going to be on the front lines of consumers not understanding these.
And this is where I've been pushing our multi-list committee to say, let's disclose where this measurement's coming from. So everybody's on that same page, you know, we know where it's coming.
That's an excellent idea. And, you know, unfortunately, I believe that buyers have been conditioned to think square footage is the primary consideration in every single purchase. And I don't think that's correct.
The thing is, appraisers will count that area somewhere else, and it's not going to get ignored. That's the one thing that agents need to know. We don't ignore anything as appraisers. Everything matters, but how much does that contribute to value? That's the other thing. We still see these things.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So bottom line is, there's a little bit of panic that is kind of necessary, but it's not going to probably affect the bottom line of most assignments. The value's still the value. It's just how it gets reported and how it gets adjusted.
Well, and here's the other thing, if we can switch to condos for a minute, because they're paint to paint.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know as appraisers, you could have a different price per square foot in a condo building based on the level. You know, if you're up high and you have that wonderful view, you might get more per square foot for your condo than I get for mine because I'm down low and I'm looking at the parking garage.
Right. But remember, ANSI deals with single family. It's the condo is a form of ownership. Now, if you happen to have a single family condo, single family detached condo, yes, we're going to count that whole outside. But you must look at the condo documents too to find out how, you know, if the association is responsible for your exterior walls, then we get into another issue. If you're, you know, all depends on a lot of little legal issues here, but ANSI only is to describe single family residential buildings.
So if I could give you one takeaway for this, well, I'm going to give you more than one. Number one, be prepared that your buyers and sellers are going to be confused and you're going to have to explain it to them. And I don't know any way around that. Number two, Bob is exactly right with his urging to your MLS committee. You should be disclosing where you got those measurements. And I understand if you do not feel that you are competent to measure to ANSI guidelines and you're not an appraiser, at this point in time, no one is asking you to, but please disclose. Disclose how you did it. I used the courthouse records. If that's what you did.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
Fine with me as an appraiser. I'd like to know that. I just don't like blanks. Blanks are
They're not
what
good.
do you do?
Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, you guys were great. This was the test run for this program. Now I know what I'm going to change and add. Allison and Justin, thank you for letting me be my guinea pig with this program.
Thank you so much for doing this on such short notice for us. I really appreciate it.
I was glad to do it. You guys know I love Greater Lehigh Valley. I will do anything for them. They're my favorites.
Thank you, Melanie.
And I would just
Hi,
also
guys.
add that Mike Naratels was sitting here, Bob, that we were listening loud and clear of what the committee should do. And again, just want to take that back that it's a lot of great dialogue. So thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for putting in some time this morning with all aspects of these changes. We know it's going to be somewhat of a change, and it's going to be stressful, but we're going to keep the education up. And again, thank you for your time, Melody, this morning. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you to all of you who participated. I really appreciated it.
Very informative. Thank you again.
Thanks, Melanie.